Because so many people are developing Alzheimer's disease, I think one of the most discouraging things I hear is stuff like, if you want to make an investment, one of the leading investments you can make is to invest in memory care centers because there are so many of them. I find that incredibly depressing, right? So, and I showed that data earlier about people are really worried about this, like they're afraid that they're going to end up with dementia. So of course the supplement industry has stepped up and created all of these products, and they're big sellers. In fact, in the United States, sales are supposed to hit $5.8 billion by 2023. And I don't think you can watch a news program without seeing a commercial for at least one supplement that promotes brain health. So the real deal on brain health supplements, Global Council on Vitamins, Minerals, and Other Dietary Supplements, looked at all of them. And they basically concluded none of them work. Okay, that's, yeah. So if you were thinking, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, have high cholesterol, and watch TV, and take jellyfish extract, that won't work either. But it's not surprising. In other words, why should this not surprise us? Look at all the risk factors that we've been talking about for Alzheimer's disease. Do you really think that there's any pill that you could take that would overcome all of that? I mean, isn't that just impractical to think about on its face? So I wasn't surprised when I saw this, and I would love it if this kind of thing worked because it would make my job so easy. I mean, if all we had to do was dispense supplements, we'd just open the office in the morning and we'd have long line, you know, because it would be the easy fix. We'd have a long line and we'd go out the door and around the block and the whole 9 yards, and we would just, you know, hand people the supplements and take in the money. We could see 5,000 people a day. It would be great, but it just doesn't work. Other than that, it's a great idea, but it doesn't work, right? So nutrition is important. Supplements are not going to be a substitute. Here's something to pay attention to. Intellectual stimulation is really important. And some people develop amyloid plaque in the brain, but they don't end up with Alzheimer's disease. I know somebody like this in Columbus, actually. He died a few years ago, but this guy was a brilliant scientist at Battelle Institute who was overweight and ate a terrible diet. And he died at, I think, 85 of an accident, didn't die of health reasons, surprisingly. But the point that I wanted to make is that after he retired from his job at Battelle, he continued to do research and make scientific presentations around the world. And Battelle often hired him to do like contract work and that sort of thing, so he was mentally engaged all the time. And because he spent all of his days thinking about complicated things, it somewhat overcame the bad habits that he had when it came to eating. So this isn't a free pass, like, oh, if you're sitting out there in the audience going, I'm a nuclear physicist, so I can eat crap all day and I'll still be really sharp. That's not the message I want to portray at all, as much as how important intellectual stimulation is. Important enough that it can overcome bad diet to a certain extent. People can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease by just engaging in daily mental activities. And believe it or not, some of those online games like Lumosity and Vivity, they're not a substitute by themselves. They're not a substitute for doing other things, but they do develop mental strength. And the programs increase in difficulty over time as you gain the ability to solve problems. So that's one thing that you can have some of your family members do if it seems like they're starting to show a little cognitive decline. Being bilingual is protective. Memory problems are delayed by an average of 5 years. And this is another one where there's a dose-dependent effect. If you speak 2 languages, it's better than 1. 3 languages is better than 2. And using them, I mean, you have to actually speak the languages. You can't just like think about it in your head. But if you actually do speak the language, yeah. I remember there was a great study done, just as a funny aside, about people getting better at playing basketball by thinking about basketball. And then when they played the game again, they were better. And so I had one of my clients was sitting in the office one day and cited that study, actually, because we were talking about changing habits. And he said, yes, I've made a commitment to think about exercise every day. I said, well, nice try. But not so much, right? Okay, keep working. People who continue to work have a lower risk of dementia. And for each additional year of work, the risk of dementia decreases by 3.2%. Now, we can define the definition of work. This doesn't necessarily mean that if you're 80 years old, you have to get up and go in the office every day, although that's what I'm planning to do, because I love what I do. But people get involved in volunteer work. I have a friend who retired last year from a job that she didn't particularly care for, but she's busy all the time doing stuff. And she has a lot of technical skill, and she's helping nonprofits. And so I think the key is you just have to stay engaged in life. You can't just go home and sit down on the porch and watch the world go by, right? And then we're back to exercise. So people who exercise have very different brains from a structural standpoint. Like the hippocampus, which is the key for memory, it's stimulated by exercise, particularly if you increase your heart rate. Out-of-shape people grew new blood vessels in the hippocampus after just 12 weeks of exercise. And exercise can reverse age-related shrinkage of the brain. Adults who exercise over 3 times a week are 40% less likely to develop dementia. People who eat a healthy diet and exercise can reduce their risk by 60%. And again, the benefit is the most significant in people with the dreadful E4 allele. So you can override your genetic risk. And there's a good reason why. We know what it is. When you exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, your brain produces a lot of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which protects and grows synapses between the cells and protects the brain cells and connections. So people who exercise actually are smarter. That's why I'm so smart, because I exercise every day. But seriously, this is brain-building stuff. Humans are meant to move. When you think about it, just to survive, we had to move. Went back in the day. And it wasn't all that long ago, actually. So this idea that you could actually sit down and have food delivered to your chair, I mean, seriously, remember that episode of Friends where the guys bought those big black chairs and they sat in the chair and had pizza delivered next door so that they'd bring it over so they wouldn't have to get up out of their chair? People live like that, okay? That's not good. So anyway, we're built to move, and not moving has serious consequences. And in addition to, which since Alzheimer's is related to aging, in addition to brain health, the thing that exercise does is it lets you be independent. Because the biggest reason why people end up in a nursing home is frailty. And it's because they can't go up and down the stairs and bend over and pick something up, and they're risk falling over on the sidewalk and that kind of thing. So the sooner you start building a strong body, the more likely you are going to be cognitively all there and living in your own house when you're 100 years old. Because you can't start when you're 95 and already decrepit, right? Time to start is now. All right. 59 older sedentary adults doing aerobic exercise 3 times a week. They measured their gray matter at 6 months in the frontal lobe areas, that's memory and attention. White matter was larger in the area that facilitates communication between the left and the right brain. So you can actually grow a bigger, better brain with exercise. A study of 63 subjects with Alzheimer's disease and 56 people without. The subjects had an MRI and then were tested on a treadmill, and their fitness levels were directly correlated with the images of their brains. Okay? There's a direct relationship. Under normal circumstances, if you don't do anything, the anterior hippocampus will shrink a little bit every year. But if you start an exercise program, just walking 3 times a week in this study showed the shrinking reversed and increasing size in some areas of the brain. So your brain size and your brain function is related to physical activity. And if you've already started degenerating a little bit, you can start to turn it around. I mentioned sleep before. It consolidates memories, and the brain will clear that amyloid plaque while you're sleeping. So I can't overemphasize the importance of a good night's sleep. And I'm not talking about, gosh, your plane comes in late and you're sleep deprived the next day, but if you're living in a chronic state of sleep deprivation, you could stay lean and you can avoid diabetes, and a lot of things can go right if you just eat well. But one thing that will not happen is your brain will not be protected if you don't get enough sleep.